Hello, so my name's David. I'm from a practice called Aberrant Architecture, which is essentially myself and my business partner Kevin Haley. We formed at the Royal College of Art when we graduated in 2007, but we really didn't start going as a kind of a business until 2009, 2010. And we see ourselves as a multidisciplinary design studio, and the project on the screen is one of our recent projects for the Mayor of London down in Waterloo for Lower Marsh Market, and it's a roaming market structure that is touring the area for the next 4 years, kind of occupying different areas and putting on different programs. Like I said, in the image here, it's showing the structure operating as the world's smallest restaurant. So they got a chef to kind of open a kitchen on the roof, and then there's a space underneath for kind of diners to come and have a really intimate dining experience using the produce that was available on the market that day. And I guess we formed in 2009, 2010, and that really corresponded with kind of the onset of cloud computing and sort of decreasing cost and increasing availability of quite sophisticated online storage and services that aren't actually that expensive anymore and actually allow you to do a lot of quite cool things. So Dropbox is actually really integral to our practice, and that kind of came out in 2008, and that really allows us to basically have that file structure that a bigger practice might have that we can access anywhere and synchronizes in real time. And now I can access any file or any information that we've produced over the last 4 years from my smartphone, which is kind of quite interesting. And in this way, wherever we are, we can access information on our laptops or through the website or on tablets or phones. And with the business version, the storage is unlimited. So I guess as we have been increasingly producing stuff over the last 4 years, we have to keep upgrading our laptops, but the storage of the hard drive gets bigger, and as the storage in the cloud is unlimited, it kind of keeps us kind of moving. We're not sure where that goes, but let's see. And also Google Apps is a kind of really integral to what we do. Came full release in 2009, which is a series of free and customizable services, the web-based email, calendar, the apps, the video chat, which essentially means that as a practice we don't have any kind of physical infrastructure sort of services or anything. And I guess this kind of onset of this available, cheap, reliable technology when we started has kind of maybe allowed us to develop this alternative architectural practice. And also a new business model, which, I mean, because we don't have the kind of big infrastructure, it allows us to connect with various architects and designers in what you might be able to describe as a more virtual practice. And there's many advantages of this. I mean, we can work alone or in groups depending on the project, or we can work in, this is where we moved our practice into shop window Selfridges for 4 weeks in 2011. So we were working here in the same way that we work in anywhere else. We have incredibly low overheads for a practice, which because we don't have to support the infrastructure of a large office. We have a lot of flexibility, so we can access any of our information anywhere, anytime. I could access anything that we've done in the last 4 years on my phone right now if I wanted to. This is an image of the installation that we made with members of the public in Selfridges. So our studio is in the other window during that project. We can discuss matters online if we're not in the same place or in the same country. We could administer our business virtually with online banking systems. I mean, all the kind of admin stuff can be done through internet services. And we have a virtual PA, so 24 hours a day you can call a number, and I think they're based in Nottingham or something. We're in a lot of meetings, if you call her up. But it's good, so you can have that kind of the systems that you'd expect from other practice, but not having to have them pay for them all the time. Also, this flexibility allows us a lot of variety in our work environment. So when we started, we worked from, this is Kevin's house at the time, but because we don't have a lot of stuff, it's quite easy to move. So we kind of worked in coffee shops. This is Cafe Otto in Dalston, where we worked for a bit. But soon after that, we won a competition to become the first architecture residents at the V&A, where I met these guys. So this is a picture of our studio in the V&A, which we moved into for 6 months. Very easily, because we could just come, set up, just access the kind of online systems, and we were ready to go. And that was an amazing opportunity to kind of, this was essentially the launch pad for our practice, have a place where we could physically be and work with the collections, but also with the museum going public. And this is our kind of latest office in Clerkenwell. You can see we still don't really have that much stuff. It's just a couple of laptops, and all the information kind of gets pulled through the cloud. And I guess this model allows us, this is another space that we occasionally work out of as well, as a hub space down in Ravensbourne next to the O2. And these kind of different spaces allow us to expand or contract depending on the project. So we have a core team of 3 people, but then we work with an expanded network of collaborators who we pull in depending on the project and depending on the kind of unique skill sets that we need for that project. And they can just kind of access our servers and things online, and then they're ready to go. And I guess this variety and this flexibility has allowed us to tackle a range of projects over the last 4 years. I mean, in a more traditional model, maybe you're kind of geared towards doing work of a certain type or a certain value, but we've been lucky enough to tackle architecture projects. So this is a competition we won for a gallery extension in South Wales in 2011. Interiors, so this is an interior project we did in East London called El Paso. Exhibitions, so this is an exhibition we designed for FACT in Liverpool, which was a kind of egg-rolling landscape of a series of structures that represented the different community groups that the gallery worked with. Public art, so this is the Tiny Travelling Theatre, which was a small public art project that we did last year for Clerkenwell Design Week that toured different areas around East London, kind of having this pop-up theatre experience. And also cultural analysis. This is a project we did for the British Pavilion at the Venice Biennale last year, where we travelled to Rio de Janeiro to investigate the standardised schools that Oscar Niemeyer built in the 1980s. So we essentially moved our practice out to Brazil for 3 weeks, and kind of whilst at the same time working on projects here, we were able to go and investigate these schools and learn all about them. And this is an image of the installation that was in the Biennale, which was a model that we made of every single school that was built in Brazil. So there's 508 individual models with little labels kind of saying where they are, their location, and the name of the school. And this flexibility, I guess, does allow us to work. We're a very small practice, but enables us to work internationally. So I was in Brazil 2 weeks ago when I was working on a project in Brazil, but also working on projects here at the same time. And this is an image of one of the schools we visited in Rocinha Favela in Rio last year. We've worked on projects in China. So this is one of the installations we did last year in Xintiandi. South Korea, so this is a biennale we worked on in Gwangju, where again we were able to move out to South Korea for a couple of weeks and work on it in Korea, when it wasn't really any difference if we were working in the UK, and also projects in Europe. And this nomadic experience has started to give us actually a specialism in a way, in that our experience of working in this way has started to inform our design work. So this is a proposal that we did for the Shenzhen Biennale in China, which was an idea for a mobile office canteen that would pitch up at the bottom of residential towers that contains people who are increasingly working at home, isolated in their bedrooms, and they can come down at lunchtime and have the sort of social office lunch that they miss because they're kind of working alone in their respective houses. When we did our residency at the V&A, we were quite interested in looking at historical typologies or historical building types that might have facilitated these nomadic existences in the past. And we were very fascinated by these original drawings for this Victorian pub called the Elephant and Castle that was existed, I think, in the late Victorian times. So we translated the original hand drawings into this large laser cut sectional model that doesn't just show the architectural spaces, but also the actual activities that used to go on in this pub. So it wasn't just a place for drinking, it was a place for working. There was community rooms, there was post offices, there was libraries, there was bureau de changes, there was accommodation, there was illicit activities that happened. So these pubs really were these kind of buildings that, you know, at that time facilitated these kind of lifestyles of living and working in the city. So we were very interested to see what models we could take from that. And we did start to input some of those lessons into our design for El Paso and the Gopher Hole, which was an interior design and community event space that we designed in East London soon after we finished the residency. And there's an image of the sort of work meeting rooms that we installed above the bar in El Paso, which turned the kind of this place that used to be just a place for selling drinks into a much more intensively used space where people can work in the day on their laptops and then have a drink in the evening, or downstairs in the event space, kind of put on design events or community events. And then also, this is a table that we designed last year for the Wallpaper Handmade exhibition, which was looking at these ideas of intensifying use, but at the scale of a piece of furniture. So this is what it looks like. It's a kind of a traditional sort of pub table or cafe table, but it has a sort of a series of different uses. So you can pop the lid up and it turns into, and screw a task light into the number plate, which it then turns into a workstation which you can use. But then if you want to go for a cigarette outside, or you need to go to the toilet, instead of having to worry about your laptop being nicked, you can just drop the lid and lock it and it's secure. And we also had a game aspect, which you could pull out with a drawer and set up this game of tabletop skittles using these office tidies. And this is an idea where lonely freelancers could challenge each other to a game and spark up a conversation and get some friends when they're working on their own. I'll talk a little bit about our kind of process. I mean, I think we very much work in CAD and in 3D models, working with Rhino. This is one of the, not the final model, but one of the models for the Time Travelling Theatre that we very much developed digitally before kind of working with the fabricator. And what's quite interesting nowadays is that with the fabricators, we often give them the 3D model, and they'll spin around it and look at it whilst they're kind of making it, even if it's, you know, welding things together out of hand. But we still very much like analog processes. So for the exhibition that we designed in Liverpool, that was very much kind of came out of a workshop process where we worked with every community group to kind of see how they wanted to represent themselves. So on the left is kind of a model that was an outcome of one of the design workshops, and then on the right is a kind of how we started to initially translate that into a kind of a digital form, which turned into this, which is a kind of a snapshot of the Rhino model. And again, on this exhibition, which turned into kind of drawings, and there's the final piece of the exhibition. But throughout this process, even when they were building it, we sent them the drawings, but also we sent them the actual models themselves, and the guys who were making this, you know, parts of it were CNC'd, parts of it were laser cut, parts of it were done by hand, but, you know, they'd have the digital model on site in the actual space, and they were spinning around it and making it. And I think, you know, we do hand drawings, but interestingly, we never kind of keep the kind of original hand drawings. We always, because they're always the start of a design process, and then we scan the hand drawings in, and they always combine them digitally to make the kind of final drawing. So even in an initial kind of pitch sketch, that is very much a lot of hand drawing. That's kind of, we would do the sort of elements of hand drawing on trace paper, scan it in, then combine it digitally in Illustrator or Photoshop or both to produce the final drawing, which is very much a digital file. This is a drawing that was an outcome of a workshop we did whilst at the V&A. So there was a big workshop process where we got lots of groups to design these, redesign these homes so that they become places where you can work as well as live. And so these models were photographed and then combined with illustrations that we did by hand, and all brought together into computer to create this final drawing that told the story of the outcome of the workshop. that's the only thing that exists. All the kind of elements, the models, the hand drawings don't exist anymore. Again, this drawing, which was the sort of press release for our Time Travelling Theatre, again is a mixture of little sketches and hand drawings and computer drawings that are kind of layered up together and combined to create a kind of the final drawing. And I think for us, the original is actually always a digital file as an outcome. This is some drawings that we did for Wallpaper magazine to kind of show how the table is to be used. So this is in eat mode. And the paper version that we produce is always a copy. So I mean the idea of the original being something paper is a bit strange to us. And I guess that comes out of one of the main disadvantages that we have, is that we don't have any space to store stuff in the way that we operate. So I guess how we've addressed that with paper is that we don't really keep paper, and the original drawings that we do are files. But I guess we do really like to make physical models. And this is a kind of a zoom in of the V&A model that we produced of the pub, which we produced using a combination of laser cutting and rubber prototyping and some hand modeling. Here's another model. And it's a real problem for us, actually. And this is a kind of a current issue we're dealing with. This is a zoom in of one of the school models that we made for the Venice Biennale exhibition, one of the 508, which in itself was made with this combination of analog and digital techniques. So we surveyed the school out in Brazil, and then we kind of translated that into a digital model, which we then rapid prototyped, and then used the rapid prototype to create a mold, which we then used to cast these 508 schools. And the schools were in the Venice show, so it was fine, so they could be there. And then they were transported to London, which they were featured in a London show. But then we were like, well, what are we going to do with all these models? We've got nowhere to put them. So at the moment now, we've managed to move them on to another show in Sao Paulo. So they're in the Sao Paulo Biennale. So I guess the strategy we have is that we either have to continually find new places to shift off all these models and things, or as alternatively, we're starting to talk with some museums in Brazil about acquiring them, because we don't really want to pay to bring them back to the UK. And that's the same with a lot of with the V&A model, that's kind of that we did with the pub, that's continually moving around different exhibitions at the moment. And I think it's something that we really need to address, is the fact that we are producing this material which we don't really have any space to do with it. And I guess perception is a kind of a strange thing with this idea of virtual practice. And this image on the screen is an image that we produced whilst being residents at the V&A, and it was interesting when we were there, and Abraham asked us, it'd be nice if the V&A could acquire something that you made whilst you were being residents, and we were like, that's fine. And then they were asking, we need it to be printed out, so we had to print out this drawing and hand it in a roll and fill out this form, and we thought it was very strange, because it's just a print, it's a copy, whatever. And I think that was very, very kind of strange for us. But there's this perception, I guess, that something that's physical, that's paper, has more value than something that's maybe digital. And that's the same with the kind of, maybe if you don't have a physical space for maybe that clients can come to. There's this idea potentially that you're not such a serious practice. I don't know. And I think that what we're kind of seeing, I guess, over the last 4 years, we've worked on projects of a certain size, which I guess the way that we work and our approach has been fine, and it's enabled us to do that. But we've just won a project actually last week for a refit of a school, which is, I think, a step up in scale for us. So I think it'll be interesting to see how we deal with that. Our idea at the moment is to move our studio to the site in the same way that we moved our studio to the V&A, and kind of work on and design the project whilst actually being on the site. But I think for us it'll be really interesting, increasingly the challenges and issues that we will face as we kind of move up scales and tackle projects that are kind of much bigger. Thank you.